Good morning, Randall and Hopkirk investigators.
A late 1960s detective series from the makers of shows like The Saint and The Champions. But rather than just being about a team of private investigators, one of them is dead. Look, been there, done that. Gotta say, trying to get anywhere in ballroom dancing when your partner is a ghost, well, I know it takes two to tango, but ideally one of you shouldn't fall through the floor after a dip has gone wrong.
You didn't. I did.
Despite lasting only one season, it made enough of an impression to spawn a remake decades later.
Why don't you stay dead like anyone else?
Randall and Hopkirk deceased.
Look, Marty, you're my best friend. You know that. You always will be. But our partnership was broken the day you got yourself murdered.
Randall and Hopkirk Deceased, also known as My Partner the Ghost, was from writer Dennis Spooner and producer Monty Berman. It was a British-made action-adventure series that ran for a single season from 1969.
You're the only one, Jeff. I chose you.
Thanks.
Jeff Randall is a private detective in London, while his late partner, Marty Hopkirk, has some time on his hands and helps out his old pal on cases, hence the show's title, Randall and Hopkirk Deceased. Which, you know, an idiot could make the case that that's actually implying that they're both dead, but really it's Randall living, Hopkirk deceased. But then there's this other Hopkirk who is living. But we'll get to her later.
Marty, this is typically you. Why can't you stay dead like anyone else?
Decades later, there was a remake which was skewed heavily towards being a quirky supernatural comedy drama, which we'll be looking at later on in this video.
Randall and Hopkirk.
Episode 1 begins with private detective Marty Hopkirk alive and well. He's tying up a few loose ends on one of partner Jeff Randall's cases, but it's not long before he's struck down in an apparent hit and run. Jeff mourns the loss of his friend and partner, but also comforts Marty's widow, Jean Hopkirk. But very soon, Jeff starts receiving odd phone calls claiming to be from Marty. At the cemetery, Jeff meets Marty Hopkirk, now a newly minted ghost, who's got a limited time on Earth before he has to go off to wherever he's about to go off to. Jeff and Marty investigate a group of contract killers, but Marty mistimes things and finds he's stuck on Earth for 100 years.
I couldn't get back in again. I've been cursed. The grave rejected me.
Where, of course, only Jeff can see or hear him. So, now you know what to get the man who's got everything. A haunting.
100 years. 100 years.
In the other 25 episodes of the series, Jeff does his private investigator routine, tracking down missing persons or consulting for companies or acting as a bodyguard, that sort of thing. But unlike other investigators, he has Marty to help out in limited ways.
The rent's due again.
The rent's always due.
Jeff Randall is hanging on by the skin of his teeth financially. He's often in debt and skint. He's a good, solid investigator, but he's not Superman, judging by the number of times he gets the absolute crap beaten out of him. As a rule of thumb, if Jeff gets into a physical altercation before the last 5 minutes of an episode, there is a very strong chance that he's going to come off second best, time and time again. Of course, all of this is outlined in Jeff Randall's autobiography, co-written with his cranial care specialist, Jeff Randall, The 7 Shades of Shit. Jeff's single, though as we'll find out, having a ghost as a best friend means being Hopkirk blocked on a regular basis.
He's dead right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Mike Pratt was a songwriter and musician who turned to acting in the 60s, where he had guest starred in several ITC shows, which brought him to the attention of Randall and Hopkirk's producers.
I'll see you tomorrow, Jeff.
Marty Hopkirk is nervous, cautious, and jealous, basically all of the words ending in OUS. Marty Hopkirk was, or is, a rather neurotic type, even as a ghost. He can't be hurt, but that doesn't stop him from being hesitant on the off chance he can get killed again. Because, you know, kill me once, shame on you. Kill me twice, shame on me.
Jeff!
Marty can't really do much but observe in his ghostly state, but he still wants to help out. At times, though, Marty's help can land his friend Jeff in deep trouble. Marty became stuck on Earth when he failed to follow the rules of ghosthood, and so now he uses his time to help Jeff and make sure that Jeannie is safe.
You're jealous. Jealous? Of course I'm jealous. That's all that's left between us now.
At the beginning of the show, Marty can't really interact with much of anything on a physical level or communicate with anyone other than Jeff.
Nobody can. Only you, Jeff. Only you.
Marty will learn various ghostly tricks like causing gusts of wind, moving through solid objects, being able to teleport from place to place, and on occasion will meet someone who can actually hear or see him. There are times when he can commune with psychics and those who are near to death, which is pretty much like people who work for Vodafone.
Oh no!
Marty is shown to be highly ineffectual at this ghost business at times.
But I do look awful, don't I? Well, you look as pale as a
But many episodes also rely on Marty somehow getting Jeff out of a pickle. Now that's of course a metaphorical pickle, not a drunken dare gone horribly wrong.
And there are 2 people going to be murdered in cold blood tonight.
Often Jeff is in danger or trapped or whatever, and so Marty has to try and convince a psychic to alert the cops, or communicate with somebody under hypnosis, or somebody on the operating table, or in order to save Jeannie, has Jeff stick somebody in a deep freeze until he's almost dead. That escalated.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Say that again.
Say that again.
One episode had Marty being able to talk to a conman, but only when he's gotten royally drunk. I sympathise, except when I've had too much to drink, I don't see ghosts, just a natural history museum guide handing me a mop and bucket.
If you know the right people, you can get anything.
The producers weren't having much luck in casting an actor for the ghost. One night, actor Kenneth Cope was dining in a London restaurant where he was making his wife laugh, while at the next table was creative consultant and director of the first episode, Cyril Frankel. The next day, Frankel recommended Cope to producer Monty Berman as being worthy of consideration for the role of the ghost. Kenneth Cope was already known from appearing in Coronation Street, and that was the week that was. He would wear a wig for the role of Marty Hopkirk, though infamously, it was apparently put on backwards for the first few episodes. Great care had to be taken with Hopkirk's suit, as a ghost is ideally not supposed to get ketchup stains on their lapels.
Hopkirk and Randall.
Now, don't get too ambitious, Marty.
Marty's widow, Jean Hopkirk, often known as Jeannie, has the hard job of trying to be the young, grieving widow, yet still remain glamorous. It is an ITC show. In early episodes, she's clearly sad and depressed, but in a way that doesn't ruin her makeup. Jeannie's wardrobe still holds up as quite tasteful compared to that worn by actresses in some of the early 70s ITC shows like The Persuaders. After a few episodes, Jeannie Hopkirk would soon start working as Jeff's secretary, despite the fact the business is closer to bankruptcy than a startup marketing a hot sauce called Lepers Bell's Bell Pepper Secretions. This gave her something to do in the series where she'd often become part of the episode's main plot. Apart from the episode where actress Annette Andre was ill, and her part in the episode was taken by Jean's sister, Jeannie.
How are things?
Fine.
Own up, love. You're depressed.
Yes, I suppose I am.
Australian actress Annette Andre had been a regular guest star on several ITC series and had recently lost out on becoming one of the leads for Monty Berman's previous series, The Champions. Despite being Australian, she never once says struth or crikey, and at no point does she ever call Jeff Randall a complete cunt.
Jeannie!
Randall and Hopkirk is first and foremost an action-adventure series about 2 detectives, only one of whom has to hang on to his petrol receipts for his tax return. The plots have varied, but you often had someone engaging Jeff as a detective, where he was assigned as a courier or hired as a bodyguard, find a missing person, that sort of thing. And other plots were down to Marty witnessing a crime and insisting that Jeff drop everything to get involved, which of course often ended badly for Jeff, since he has no rational explanation for how or why he knows what he knows. Various police inspectors are usually highly suspicious of Randall, considering him to be dodgier than a replacement near-side fender for a Ford Mondeo fashioned out of chewing gum recovered from underneath the seats at the train station. I know that is oddly specific, and I know that I need to find a more reputable person to fix my car, but if you can find somebody cheaper at Smash Repairs than Tommy Cheapskate Gum Gum, then I'd really love to know.
You won't tell them, will you?
Who?
Them? No. Oh.
The main cast are excellent in their roles, where they'd have to pause mid-sentence and freeze while Kenneth Cope got in and out of position and then resume a conversation.
There's room for 4 of us in here. Well, we can all go.
Clever editing meant that some of his manifestations work incredibly well. Also great, Mike Pratt having to hold a conversation with Marty while other people are around. Most of the time he just gives up and sounds like he's talking to himself.
Are you, early or just late again?
Late again, I'm afraid.
You are not borrowing from my wife.
Randall and Hopkirk is a charming show, but it didn't impress UK newspaper critics at the time of its release, mainly because, like a lot of ITC shows, they felt it was too transatlantic, too geared towards American tastes, despite Randall and Hopkirk being the most British show from ITC in a while. Its enduring popularity may not be on the same level as, say, The Saint or The Avengers or The Prisoner, but it's a series that has stuck around in a way that many of its contemporaries haven't.
Who are you? Marty Hopkirk, my wife's husband.
When BBC Two screened a number of ITC shows in the 1990s, a whole new generation were exposed to classic series including Randall and Hopkirk.
Marty. A ghost.
We've previously talked about the business model of Lou Grade's ITC shows in various videos about Jerry and Sylvia Anderson series. But in general, ITC made a number of high production value series. They were glossy, they were shot on colour 35mm film, made in Britain, but with the idea that they're only considered successful if a US network bought them, so much of the time they had an American lead. While US networks lapped up The Saint, most ITC shows would just run for one season, and without a network order for more episodes, these shows were quietly cancelled. The potential money from a US network sale just dwarfed any money from the rest of the world, which is great. I just wish I had known that before I filmed my series Duck-Billed Platypus Hunter in Norwegian. One of those one-year series was The Champions from 1968, a breezy show where 3 spies gained superpowers. The creators of The Champions, writer Dennis Spooner and producer Monty Berman, pitched Lou Grade a series about a trio of super smart agents called Department S, and when another series proposal fell through, the pair quickly put together another concept.
I have got a sort of idea. Let's hope it's a good one.
How about a detective series, but one of the partners is as dead as a doornail that's been through a really bad patch?
If I start telling Jeannie that her late husband is being blackmailed by the ghost of a Prohibition gangster, she'll go spare.
ITC financed both series, which would be made alongside each other at ITC's Associated British Elstree Studios. ITC in the 60s had gone from solo adventurers to spies, and now to detectives, basically any job where they could get into trouble. If the series was about a pair of accountants, where would be the fun in that?
There are 2 accountants, one's a ghost, but they're both dead.
While ITC shows were usually filmed on soundstages and locations very near to the studios, they were often set all over the world thanks to backlot sets and stock footage. Randall and Hopkirk was set almost completely in Britain, and mainly in London or the surrounding countryside. One episode did send the characters to Monte Carlo for an episode set in a casino. Of course, it was all completely shot at Elstree, but by and large, Randall and Hopkirk episode settings didn't stray all that far from home.
I'm telling you, Jeff, they've got this hotel covered.
London locations were usually somebody's flat or a mews house, various offices including Jeff's office, and then a lot of the action would take place in small villages or country homes, where we have lots of people driving down tree-lined back roads.
Yeah, just a minute. It's for you.
Oh,
In order to keep production moving efficiently, there's a lot of use of photo doubles of the main cast in long shots filmed by a second unit, scenes shot with stunt performers, blue screen work for some in-car scenes, and occasionally other scenes requiring an exterior setting.
What do you think of it?
The expensive blue screen process didn't extend to being used for the special effects sequences involving Marty. Most of the ghostly manifestations were captured in camera, with Marty usually just vanishing with a simple edit. Other times an old theatrical trick was used to show Marty walking through walls. The Pepper's ghost effect uses a piece of glass at a 45-degree angle in front of the camera, while Kenneth Cope was off to one side in a part of the set covered in black fabric, so that the reflected image of the ghost was superimposed over the action. It was time-consuming to set up and was used sparingly. The other special effect that was used quite a lot? String.
I can't see how it was done.
Randall and Hopkirk, with its less exotic settings, was designed to be a cheaper series to make
that's quite a coincidence.
compared to something like Department S, though it's still full of car fights and fist chases. Sorry, that should be the other way around. Car chases and fist fights, even if most of Jeff's fist fights end with a TKO. It's a detective series, but it's a quirky detective series, where in one episode a man who thinks he has a valid claim to the English throne uses a beauty pageant as a cover for stealing government documents. Or potential heirs to a fortune have to outlive a flock of rare birds, and the heirs are being picked off one by one under Jeff's nose. A ghost hunter hires Jeff to be his backup.
Put me near a ghost, and I can tell you immediately.
He's not very good, is he, Jeff?
A psychic up to no good tries to exorcise Marty. A lot of plots in Randall and Hopkirk are just people in country houses up to no good. Some episodes involve people from the past.
He's just gone for some champagne to celebrate our reunion.
An escaped convict looking to take his revenge on Marty instead sets his sights on Jean. A man turns up claiming to be a reincarnated version of Marty Hopkirk. In one episode, Jeff Randall appears to no longer be able to see or hear Marty. He's acting a little differently and even makes a pass at Jeannie. It turns out that the real Jeff is being held captive somewhere and that a Jeff imposter has taken his place. One episode was co-written by Mike Pratt, where Jeannie and her sister Jenny record Jeff talking to Marty and have him committed.
Hit him now!
If I had to pick a favourite episode, it would be That's How Murder Snowballs, where Jeff goes undercover as a mind reader in a music hall to uncover a murderer and exonerate another mind reader played by David Jason. At the beginning, Jeff is so skint that he sells the story to a reporter for a couple of quid, which is not something you would have seen other ITC heroes doing. Randall and Hopkirk is not a particularly gritty show, but it does come at a time where it straddles the tail end of the swinging 60s and the start of whatever the shitty 70s were.
You really needed Marty.
Eh?
To keep you out of trouble.
Mike Pratt had fallen off a balcony and injured himself in the middle of shooting one of the last episodes.
Just don't make a habit of it, huh?
The episode was finished by shooting around a relatively immobile Mike Pratt and using photo doubles, but the final episode in production was rewritten as a flashback story.
So how did you fall off a balcony, Jeff?
It seemed to come pretty naturally at the time.
Marty tells Jeff a story from his days as a detective, an actual living detective, with petrol receipts and everything. It's the only time we'd ever see Jeannie and Marty interact with each other in an episode. Oh, what a sweet couple, they'll go far. But with that, Randall and Hopkirk deceased ended. Well, for the time being.
Who's telling this story?
You are, Marty. Yeah, I mean Jeannie.
Oh, and very importantly, does the white jag go over a cliff? Yes, it does. Randall and Hopkirk has an issue whereby the tone of the show could be inconsistent, where some episodes have a borderline macabre feeling to them, with people scared out of their minds before they die, almost as if they were going for a much harder-nosed thriller at times. Some episodes have no deaths, and others rack up more bodies than a morgue having a Black Friday sale.
Well, he doesn't say much, but he pays well.
As production wore on, there was a push from the cast, perhaps supported by Dennis Spooner, to exploit the humorous potential of a detective having a ghost for a partner. Look, I dig. I once had a ghost for a partner when I worked as a trapeze artist. Now, pro tip, if you are a trapeze artist, do not work with a partner who is a ghost. I mean, there's several reasons for that. Realistically, what value can a ghost partner provide you as a partner in a trapeze act? And of course, what led to the trapeze artist becoming a ghost trapeze artist in the first place?
I can't talk about it, huh?
Later episodes of Randall and Hopkirk do show the humorous potential coming to the fore, and for me personally, these episodes often work better and give the series its own personality compared to many of the other ITC shows, which, while entertaining, can often blur into each other.
There's a man creeping up behind you. I want you to hit him now.
Producer Monty Berman was renowned as a hard taskmaster, keeping one eye on the clock, another eye on the production team, and another eye on the budget. Yes, I know that's 3 eyes. Berman in particular wanted a serious show.
Well, you better think of something quickly. He's making funeral arrangements already.
Series creator Dennis Spooner had previously worked as a scriptwriter for Jerry and Sylvia Anderson series Fireball XL5, Stingray and Thunderbirds. He'd also written for and story edited Doctor Who, and would go on to co-create several of ITC's shows in the 60s. While he was known for a comic streak in his writing, he also had an interest in the supernatural.
Only I can see you, Marty, and I sometimes wonder why.
Because I'm haunting you.
Cyril Frankel was a director who also acted as a consultant to the series, and he, like Berman, was also initially of the mind that the series shouldn't be played for comedy.
I don't want a ghost haunting me all the time. I want to lead a normal life.
That tug of war between seriousness and comedy would play out all throughout the series, eventually skewing more towards the comedy by the end of the show's run.
You know as well as I do what's going to happen.
You never can tell, Jeff. It might just work.
But here's the thing, let's face it, Marty's dead and he's not coming back to life. He's haunting his best friend and has to watch his wife grieve while she has to get on with her life. It is very easy to get maudlin in this situation, especially if you played this show for realism.
I just can't go on.
From a purely business perspective, Jeff having a dead partner who can go anywhere, doesn't need toilet breaks or put in for overtime, doesn't require matching pension contributions, doesn't have to worry about petrol receipts, and who works for basically nothing, it's just a bonus.
Well, this is a fine mess, isn't it?
Randall and Hopkirk's music was provided by Edwin Astley, who'd scored several other ITC shows of the era, where the show had a doleful, melancholy score with lots of clarinets and harpsichords, punctuated by big brass stabs for the action scenes. But man, did Edwin Astley love the harpsichord. Randall and Hopkirk was made over 1968 and 1969, and while the youth culture of the time had exploded, it's only very occasionally referenced in the series, with a beatnik in one episode and a guy saying "man" all the time with a giant afro in another.
It's just not my scene, man.
And then there's the occasional discotheque scene for Jeff to try and pick up a girl, or one with a group of young people having a party where Jean attends so she can mope. At no point do we ever meet a hippie ghost or acknowledge the music of the Monkees.
They'll never believe it.
Randall and Hopkirk starts off with Jeff Randall wearing suits, but as the series wore on, he'd eventually spend most episodes dressed more casually. Annette Andre dresses very stylishly for a recent widow who's working as a secretary for a business approaching bankruptcy faster than a comet looking to crash a dinosaur's house party.
I don't want to be critical, but good.
Because the mood I'm in, I don't want to hear anything but sympathy.
When Randall and Hopkirk was screened in the UK, it was like many ITC shows, screened at different times depending on where in Britain you lived.
I just don't understand it, Inspector. It was all laid on for 1 o'clock.
As such, there's no real hard and fast viewing order, apart from watching the first episode where Marty ruins the paintwork of a car used to run him down.
Some flatfoot. And you! Jeff!
It was apparent that ITC didn't have a lot of faith in the series with relatively limited publicity at the time.
Well, there's not much doubt about that.
And only a few film prints struck, so that various ITV regions had to share the same film prints, which meant hardly anybody saw the series in the same order. It's episodic television, so that doesn't really matter all that much, as there are almost no callbacks to previous episodes.
That's life. If you see what I mean.
The series was eventually offered to US broadcasters, but it would not be screened until 1974, where it acquired the title My Partner the Ghost, which is less poetic than the original title, but it did at least outline the series premise with the minimum of syllables.
Well, can you think of a better explanation?
Not yet, but I'm working on it.
Randall and Hopkirk was originally made with a colourful introductory title sequence with clips of Marty's death and shots of the cast overlaid with a London street map. This is how I saw the show years later. But before the initial UK broadcasts, another simpler sequence was spliced into the action where the series premise was outlined by a voiceover from Kenneth Cope.
Only you, Jeff. Only you.
So there are many people for whom the Only You, Jeff is the proper credit sequence. The only way to watch the series. And then there are people who insist the more colourful street map sequence is the proper way to see the series. There is, of course, only one way to settle this. A dance-off. Okay, maybe later. After the series, the cast would go on to appear in many other shows as guest artists or appear on stage. Kenneth Cope appeared in a few Carry-On movies and would do long stints on British soaps. Hard-living Mike Pratt died in the mid-70s from lung cancer when he was only in his mid-40s.
Ghosts don't have nervous breakdowns.
How do you know? If I want a nervous breakdown, I shall have one.
ITC throughout the 70s would make fewer shows going forward, but they'd almost always have a big American star as its lead. So while the series ended its original run in 1969, where it was unloved by critics for being transatlantic, Randall and Hopkirk seem to have stuck around in people's minds, well, the ones that watched the show or discovered it over the years in repeat screenings.
Jeff, it would take too long to explain. You've got to get the police, and you've got to get some pants!
Randall and Hopkirk was something that I had read about in a magazine, and then in the early 90s, it became one of the many filler series broadcast in the middle of the night in the days before overnight television became wall-to-wall infomercials. So out of curiosity, I taped an episode, watched it, and loved it.
Tell him you're a mind reader.
I'm a mind reader. No, I'm not.
Oh, yes, you are.
Randall and Hopkirk started off as yet another of ITC's shows with two men and a woman, but the characters in Randall and Hopkirk aren't jet-setting spies or superheroes. There's no American lead, and the main characters aren't independently wealthy or even solvent.
Oh, and that's the whistle. Yes, the referee's blown time.
They should be blown up.
It's a very English show for an ITC series at the time, where only one episode is set outside of Britain. Of course, while it doesn't explicitly chase American tastes, it still hits with a lot of the popular British stereotypes that played well outside of Britain.
Where are we going? Be it ever so humble.
Randall often works for rich clients, and so many episodes are set in country homes or small villages in the south of England or mews houses in London. Randall might look like somebody who's been shaving with 24 grit sandpaper, but he is rather well spoken, more posh than nosh.
Tonight, the whole of southern England was without electricity. So far, the power failure is unaccounted for.
Annette Andre's perfect RP accent is even posher.
No more lunches at the laundromat.
While Kenneth Cope, despite originally hailing from Liverpool, never once calls Jeff pal.
Look, you get back there. And whatever you do, keep in touch. Please keep in touch, right?
That ITC formula feel was there in the sorts of plot seen in Randall and Hopkirk, but the series does have its own fairly unique charm to set it apart. The Champions was the slightly smug superheroes traipsing across Europe sipping triple sec. Department S was the sexy smug agents sipping champagne. Randall and Hopkirk was a trio of private detectives sitting in a dank pub with a pint of Guinness, a white wine for the lady, and an empty glass.
Oh, well, that's the end of that then.
That's it.
And then, 30-odd years later, a remake of Randall and Hopkirk Deceased popped up. Now here's the part where the fans of the original tell everybody how much they hate the remake, while people who grew up with the remake liked it, and how no dance-off will ever reconcile the two viewpoints. Not now, not now.
Marty, you're so easy to wind up.
Production company working title. Films had the rights to remake the series through their WTTV subsidiary and had planned on making a new version of Randall and Hopkirk as a thriller. But when the suggestion was made to cast a comedian as the lead, the show would become more of a comedy thriller. British comedy duo Reeves and Mortimer made it known that they were interested in starring in the new series and brought with them Charlie Higson as a producer who'd write, direct and appear in most episodes in a number of small roles. Higson was a writer and cast member of the 90s sketch comedy hit The Fast Show.
Jeannie, I'm just an ordinary bloke whose best friend just happens to be a ghost.
Bob Mortimer and comedy partner Jim Moir, using the stage name Vic Reeves, had a number of popular 90s comedy series based around the pair's surreal and anarchic sense of humour. Well, this video was posted 25 years after the new series debuted, so it's hardly the new version because it's nearly as old as the original was when this was first broadcast. So I'll just go with the remake.
Though there may be others with the gift of seeing morons.
The remake of Randall and Hopkirk is as much of a time capsule as the original was. The remount, remake, reboot, redeceased show would feature a mix of dramatic actors with a light touch and British comedy stars of the 90s and early 2000s, with more of Higson's co-stars from The Fast Show, as well as the stars of comedies Little Britain and The League of Gentlemen and other series of the time. Former Doctor Who star Tom Baker, future Doctor Who star David Tennant, Gareth Thomas from Blake 7, there's also Charles Dance, Martin Clunes, Hugh Laurie, Simon Pegg, Peter Bowles, Jessica Hines, Anthony Daniels, Derek Jacobi, Pauline Quirk, Dervla Kerwin, and many, many, many more familiar faces.
Which is incredibly similar and probably slightly more entertaining.
Bob Mortimer played Jeff Randall, who was a slightly nervous private detective trying to keep his business above water. His partner, Marty Hopkirk, played by Reeves, is killed on his wedding day and given a small window to sort out his affairs, namely his murder.
Marty, you're not dead! Of course I'm dead, you idiot. You buried me.
When he doesn't report for the afterlife in time, he's cursed to spend more time in between this world and the next. And so yes, stop me if you've heard this one before. He'll help out Jeff Randall on his cases.
You won't try and pretend that you see Marty's ghost anymore, will you?
No, never. No, I'll put all that behind me.
Marty's fiancée, Jeannie Hurst, joins Randall as a partner in the detective agency. Jeannie is far more capable in this version, played by Emilia Fox, who'd go on to star in forensic drama Silent Witness for decades. Working as an actor on one show for so long is either because of a really bad contract at the start or a really good pension plan.
You managed to mix up a lot of metaphors there, willy-nilly.
It's the year 2000 and characters on these sorts of shows were no longer chaste and sexless, with the series having a continuing undercurrent of Jeff quite understandably being attracted to Jeannie.
Well, all right then, let's discuss your breasts.
But with Marty's ghost hanging around like that odd smell coming from my cousin's shed, sexual tension hung thick in the air, though again, my cousin's shed. The scripts would often look for ways to have the pair sort of hook up, but not actually hook up.
Evil beings from another time are trying to come back to life, and we've got to stop them.
No, that you're upset because I slept with Jeannie.
The remake show could be scarier, with much more overt horror elements, but even goofier in its comedy.
Is anyone any good with knots?
With far wider extremes in both horror and comedy than the 1960s series.
Of course, you're not scared of ghosts, are you? Believe me, Jeff, ghosts are trouble.
The tonal contrast between the plot and comedy is sometimes more jarring than serving Happy Meals at a wake.
What's this?
FX technology made it possible to do much, much more with Marty's ghostly party tricks. But now, Marty had a mentor, Wyvern, where Tom Baker's appearances in most episodes were quite welcome.
Marty, it's yourself you're setting free.
Marty would learn a new trick in each episode, which of course, like Bond gadgets, will be exactly what's needed for that one episode. Some of the video effects do look like they have dated more than Warren Beatty, which is a joke that works in two completely different ways depending on your age.
Ow, it was a joke! It was a joke!
There were 13 episodes over 2 series broadcast by the BBC in 2000 and 2001. Jeff and Jeannie may be investigating various missing persons, which will often lead to a larger conspiracy, sometimes but not always with a supernatural or fantasy bent.
It's very awkward being just ectoplasm.
Marty has chosen Jeff, and so he can only be around in our world if Jeff is not too far away. Marty here is a little less jealous of the idea of Jeff and Jeannie getting together, and he's not as obsessive as the old Marty.
Mortality is a great motivator of all human achievement.
You mean if death wasn't so much of a big deal, we wouldn't bother getting out of bed?
Marty is more outgoing and energetic than Jeff. Jeff here is a lot more cautious. Well, he kind of has to be if he doesn't want to be measured up for a white suit.
Wait a minute, you're not supposed to be here.
I am, I'm dead, I think.
Jeannie doesn't need to wait for Jeff to rescue her, and indeed, this version of Jeff is almost useless without having either Jeannie or Marty around. The supernatural plays a much bigger part of this version, with more scenes with Wyvern or in Limbo, more storylines involving other ghosts, and occasional stories verging on science fiction.
Well, look at me, there's nothing to me. There never was, Marty.
The first season ended with the best episode, A Village Where People Can See Marty, which turns out to be a village caught in between two time periods, where it ends with Marty having to make a choice. It's the only time that Jeannie becomes aware of Marty as a ghost, but the episode ends with her and Jeff's memories of Marty's ghostly presence being erased. The second series quickly reset itself with Marty reintroducing himself to Jeff, while Jeff and Jeannie investigate a hotel with a ghostly reputation where Jeannie's taken over by a long-dead spectre. Another episode saw Jeff reconnecting with his ex-girlfriend, or so he thought. The episode turns chilling when we realise that she and Marty can interact with each other. And another involves research into removing or delaying pain. An episode that goes places. There's also an episode where Jeff and Jeannie team up with a rival pair of detectives, Marshall and Snellgrove. While it would be nice to have a deceased friend still be around, let's not pretend that Jeff isn't being haunted by his late friend. Damned to have his dead friend Marty Hopkirk pop up unannounced whenever he's sitting on the toilet. A ghostly and possibly malevolent presence listening to your every word, inserting itself into every conversation, or just listening in on your phone calls to your mother.
Calling mother.
Not now, not now.
Really? You're a private detective as well? I bet you got some stories to tell. No? Oh, well, nice talking to you.
There are occasional links to the earlier series, though original Marty, Kenneth Cope, has since said that he hated the remake and had declined to appear. One episode of the new series was a remake of original series episode A Disturbing Case, which was of course co-scripted by the late Mike Pratt.
Okay, Jeff, right arm back and smash him in the face. Ah!
The theme tune by David Arnold and Tim Simonon is perhaps my favourite part of the new series, where a vocal version was released as a single. Though most of the show's incidental music was provided by Murray Gold a few years before he'd go on to massive success as Doctor Who's resident composer. The Randall and Hopkirk remake has snappy production values, but also has a weird rhythm where its comedy performers seem to be leaving pauses for audience laughter. Laughter that I'm not entirely sure was forthcoming.
Desist! You must take things more seriously, Mr. Hopkirk.
While some of the show is played for laughs, it's not always especially funny, more amusing. The slapstick generally doesn't work very well, but the more organic interpersonal banter between the leads is fantastic.
You kept that quiet, didn't you?
Jeff's intense discomfort as having to hold a conversation with two people at the same time, but one of them is invisible to the other, works really well in the remake.
Can't you leave me alone for 5 minutes?
I thought you were pleased to see me.
What were you talking about? Were you talking about me then?
No.
Okay, I'll go.
No, Jeannie, please.
The remake ended after 13 episodes, and it's hard to put a finger on my overall feelings, because I like many of the moving parts in this, but dislike other parts. And it's not just because I like the original. This is a case of two shows being offshoots of the exact same premise, but going off into very different directions. In both cases, it's probably a case of you had to be there at the time.
In layman's terms.
We're going to kill you and eat you.
And there was one sure way to make the Reeves and Mortimer version of Randall and Hopkirk worse, which would have been to make it as a carbon copy of the original. Remakes are often greenlit because they've got the blessing of brand awareness, but then there's the curse of expectations of fans of the original, and then the imperative for the remake crew to put a contemporary stamp on the material. In other words, like Jeff Randall, you're damned either way.
He's there, I can see Marty.
It's just a drug. It's affected your mind. You're seeing what you want to see. Just close your eyes and I'll be gone.
I'm going to predict a Venn diagram of fans of each series would not overlap all that much, but who knows?
Bringing back the dead. What a load of rubbish. Sorry, Marty. No thanks.
Each show has its strengths and weaknesses, but if you ask me to pick, I'll do what many of you will do. I'll just pick the one that I saw first and proclaim that to be the best. Not now.
You always pull through in the end, Marty, you and Jeff.
Randall and Hopkirk Deceits from 1969 or from 2000 are two shows with two vastly different takes on the same material. A ghost who comes back to help out. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
Right, how would you get into this thing?